All right, geometry folks, this is 4.4. We're talking about rhombi and squares. Now, here's what you got to remember. First off, rhombi and squares, they are also parallelograms. So everything that was true with a parallelogram is also true with the rhombi and square. So opposite sides parallel, opposite sides congruent, opposite angles congruent, consecutive angles are supplementary, and the diagonals bisect. Here's what a couple other things are true with rhombi and squares, and we'll get to those in just a second. First off, a rhombi is a parallelogram with 4 congruent sides, so it's a specific kind of parallelogram. So kind of what we just talked about, opposite sides are congruent and parallel, opposite angles congruent, consecutive angles supplementary, and the diagonals bisect each other. A couple other things you need to know about a rhombus. One, it's got 4 congruent sides. Secondly, in a rhombus, the diagonals are perpendicular. All right, the diagonals are going to be perpendicular. So not only do they bisect, but they are perpendicular. Now, what you have to be careful though is this. In a rhombus, the diagonals aren't congruent to each other like in a rectangle. All right, but they are perpendicular to each other. Let me say that again. Rectangles, the diagonals are congruent. In a rhombus, they are not. All right, also in a rhombus, the diagonals bisect the opposite angle. So here's what that means. This diagonal bisects these two angles. So 7 is going to be congruent to 8, 5 is going to be congruent to 6, 3 is going to be congruent to 4, 1 is going to be congruent to 2. What is also kind of nice is the fact that boom, 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 those are all right angles. And since these two are congruent, since the opposite angles are congruent, 3 is going to be congruent to 1, 2 will be congruent to 4, 5 will be congruent to 7, 8 will be congruent to 6. So the angles that get bisected are all congruent to each other. So angle, given quadrilateral ABCD is a rhombus, find the following. BCD is 64, so that whole thing is 64 degrees. Find BAC, so find this guy right here. Well, judging by what we just figured out is that diagonals bisect. So that makes this 32 and this 32. Also, since it's a quadrilateral, this whole thing is 64 because opposite angles have to be congruent. So if this is 32, this is 32. So if that's 64, that thing's got to be 32. Just cuts it in half. That's the definition of bisect. So let's take a look at some of the segment pieces here. First off, remember that all 4 sides are congruent. AB is 2x plus 3. BC is x plus 7. Find CD. Well, all 4 sides are congruent. That means this is equal to this. So below subtraction, I get x to equal 4. So if x equals 4, that means that this side and this side, I really hope both equal 11. That means CD is going to be 11. That's going to be your answer. So a square is a very, very special, very specific kind of parallelogram. Here's what you have to remember about a square. A square is a parallelogram with 4 congruent sides and 4 right angles. Basically, a square is a rhombus and a rectangle. Everything that's true about a rectangle is true in a square. Everything true about a rhombus is true with a square. So pretty much everything and anything that could happen with a rhombus or rectangle is also true with the square. So right angles, congruent sides. So we got to kind of, let's Venn diagram this thing. So right angles. Well, congruent sides. Well, rectangles have got 4 right angles. 4 congruent sides are going to be a rhombus. And where those overlap, that is where our square fits in. So the diagonals of a rhombus, WX, YZ intersect at V. Use given information to find the measure value. WZX, sounds like a radio station. This is 39.5. Find ZYX. So find this angle right here. Well, let's do this. This is 39.5. That means this is 39.5 because it's a rhombus. So that whole thing is 79. This is still a parallelogram, folks. That means these 2 angles right there are supplementary. That means add up to 180. So if this is 79, this guy's got to be 101. So ZYX has got to be 101 degree. So WX is 8x minus 5. WZ is 6x plus 3. Find x. Well, it's a rhombus. Those two are equal to each other. Simple enough. So we've got 2x equals 8. So x is going to equal 4. Again, all I did was algebra. Subtract 6x, add 5, add 5. It's a square. If WT is 3, find each measure. Haha. All right, so if WT is 3, first off, rules of a rectangle come into play. So this is 3, it gets bisected, that's 3. That's a rule of a parallelogram. Diagonals bisect. Rules of a rectangle come into play in the fact that this is also 3 and this is also 3. All right, so WY is going to be 6. TZ is going to be 3. WTZ, rules of a rhombus, that's going to be 90 degrees. And since all 4 of these cut in half and they bisect, that means every single one of these is 45 degrees. All right, squares are nice because you know a lot about them without having to know too much. So all I have to do is say it's a square and you know a lot about this. Okay, that's all I got. So let's kind of recap. All right, so here's what we got. You've got parallelogram. And a whole bunch of stuff is true about that, okay? Opposite sides, congruent or parallel, opposite sides, congruent, opposite angles, congruent, consecutive angles, supplementary, and diagonals bisect. Now, off of there, okay, this is kind of a flow chart here. You have a rhombus, and you have a rectangle. Rhombus, 4 congruent sides, and diagonals are perpendicular. Rectangle, 4 right angles, diagonals congruent. So off of both of those, you have the square. Square fits into rectangle and rhombus, and it's still a parallelogram. So a whole bunch of stuff is true about a square. Okay, so this is kind of a good pattern to think about what we're talking about here. So if you want one picture to remember, I would remember that.